Intel CEO Lip Bhutan will reportedly visit the White House today after an invitation from President Trump and questions surrounding his potential ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Wall Street Journal is reporting that, quote, Tan hopes to win Trump's approval by showing his commitment to the country and pledging the importance of keeping Intel's manufacturing capabilities as a national security issue. President posted last week, quote, the CEO of Intel is highly conflicted and must resign immediately. There is no other solution to this problem. He posted that shortly after Maria reported on Senator Tom Cotton's letter questioning Intel's, the CEO's ties to the Chinese military. That's the Cadence story, Cadence Design Systems. Maria also spoke with Vice President J.D. Vance about this in an exclusive interview on Sunday Morning Futures. Watch.
Nobody does surveillance better than China. What else can the U.S. do to keep China in a box? Because they're undermining us at every turn. Just this week, Senator Tom Cotton sent a letter to Intel about its CEO because it was selling secrets to companies tied to the Chinese military.
Yep.
Is there anything else to be done there that you'd like to discuss?
And this is where it goes back to having a really great FBI director and a really great attorney general, is that when people are stealing America's secrets or stealing our corporate intellectual property and sending it to anywhere, we've got to prosecute that stuff. We know that Chinese companies have been really big offenders when it comes to the theft of American intellectual property. We got to prosecute that stuff and push back against that stuff. We need to protect our own manufacturing. The way that China was able to catch up to us technologically is that they took all of these great manufacturing industries and built a whole technology infrastructure on top of that manufacturing base.
Joining me now, Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, your reaction?
Well, certainly the vice president was right. The FBI does need to investigate. Mr. Tan, when he was CEO of Cadence, and he was CEO for 13 years, but through 6 of those years, Cadence had 56 sales of chip making, software, and other tech products to a Chinese entity that is essentially the Chinese military. And this was a crime, clearly. And Cadence actually pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to violate export controls, agreed to pay a fine of more than $140 million. Tan is one of the most capable U.S. executives. He certainly has the right vision for Intel. He can turn Intel around, but he should be nowhere near Intel's offices because last decade, he put the life of every American at risk with this series of sales to the Chinese military. That's unforgivable. It needs to be prosecuted. The vice president is right. Well,
again, the Journal reports that his goal is to basically convince President Trump today of his commitment to the national security of the United States. He's going to say, look, I was born in Malaysia, I'm a U.S. citizen, but that the manufacturing of Intel's chips in the U.S. is a matter of national security. I think the other thing that's interesting is that, Cadence paid, what, a $140 million fine over all of this, so, because of this DOJ investigation. So certainly that meeting will be interesting. We'll have to see what the fallout is from that after it happens today. Let's move on to this, because another big story that crossed this morning, NVIDIA and Advanced Micro Devices both have reportedly agreed to pay 15% of their China chip sales revenues to the U.S. government. The Commerce Department issued licensings for the sale of the H20 chip from NVIDIA to China after a months-long halt. Remember that Jensen Huang was at the White House meeting with the president. NVIDIA hitting back at Chinese state media after there were claims that their chips are a national security risk for Beijing. Let's take a look at the stocks this morning in the pre-market with you, Gordon, because both of the stocks are down. NVIDIA is down about a little over 0.75%. AMD is down almost 2%. The Journal pointing out that this is an unusual agreement, to say the least, Gordon. What do you make of it?
This is a really bad idea. First of all, from a philosophical point of view, the government shouldn't be joint venturing with companies. But there's something more important here, and that is this arrangement gives the U.S. government incentives to approve the sale of advanced chips to China, and that is exactly the wrong direction. I don't think the U.S. should be permitting the sale of the H20 or the AMD MI308. The Trump administration is going to do it, but that's wrong. And we certainly shouldn't be giving incentives to the government to do something which is not in the national security interest of the United States.
But at the same time, we're in the middle of a trade negotiation with the Chinese. And obviously, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick had told Maria that, there could be an extension, another 90-day extension. These talks are very complicated. There's already been 3 meetings that they've had, and we still don't have any kind of, official deal on the table. I'll leave it there. But at the same time, there's also the rare earth mineral story. So there is reasons that there are. I can see where the Trump administration is saying there are reasons that we want to hammer out this deal. Maybe the AMD NVIDIA piece of this is part of the overall picture.
For decades, we Americans thought that if we give concessions to China, that China will reciprocate and give concessions to us, that we can only be friends with them. And so therefore, we do these things to help China. Unfortunately, as we've seen over the course of decades, that is a failed approach. I think the only way that we're going to get to an acceptable trade deal with China is if we impose really severe costs on Beijing to give them an incentive to do the right thing. Now, that's something that is politically unacceptable. Most people wouldn't want to do that. But unfortunately, we got to try something new, because the accepted wisdom has produced catastrophic results for us over the course of 3 decades.
All right, Gordon Chang, it's always great to speak to you. A lot of moving parts right now. It's always great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Cheryl.
All right, Gordon Chang.